We have people we're locking up on that. We have someone in jail right now from one of the dealerships. They're looking at up to 20 years in prison. So if you're going to touch a Tesla, go to a dealership, do anything, you better watch out because we're coming after you.
Cybertrucks are ablaze. Showrooms are riddled with bullets and Molotov cocktails. Across the U.S. and beyond, Tesla-branded properties are under attack. No casualties, yet. The violence surges as Trump's second term begins, with unelected Musk at the helm of a powerful new government agency. Tesla was once a leftist icon. Now Musk is blaming left-wing billionaires. Arrests mount. Slogans like, quote, Nazi cars and resist appear on torched buildings. The White House vows crackdowns. A little over 3 months ago, you referred to Tesla shareholders as, quote, lemmings. Let's revisit your December 6, 2024 call.
I don't want to say lemmings because it's not true in every case, but a lot of these big tech names, it's like the lemmings going over the cliff with them. If you look at Tesla, for example.
Traders betting against Tesla have raked in $16.2 billion over the past 3 months as the stock plummeted nearly 50%. Short interest totals almost $17 billion with over 70 million shares shorted. 8.5 million shares worth about $2 billion were sold short in the last 30 days alone. You're still short the stock. What's next for Tesla shareholders?
If you've ever watched this channel and enjoyed the content, or if you're enjoying this episode, could I ask for a small favor? Please hit the subscribe button. Your subscription helps this channel more than I can explain right now, and also makes you an integral part of our success. I promise to return the favor by making the show increasingly better. We're on this journey together, and I'm willing to make that promise to you if you hit the subscribe button.
Wait a second.
Do we have a deal?
Did I call Tesla shareholders lemmings?
It's like the lemmings going over the cliff with them. If you look at Tesla, for example.
And I think they lost about $800 billion in market cap at one point over a period of about 90 days. When you think about why you own Tesla stock, you have to ask yourself, what's really motivating you? Is it something that you heard online? Is it the constant promotion of the stock by followers and devotees to the brand? Is it the political leadership seeming to support and try to buttress the share price? Or is it that you're handing your money over to Tesla management and leadership with the expectation they'll be good stewards and they'll return it to you at some future date and in an enlarged amount? And when you look at what you're really getting for Tesla, you're paying at this point, with the slight recovery in the last few days, almost $300 a share. And you're getting about $1.02 a share in free cash flow in return, about 7% net margins, which is slightly better than the grocery store. If you were to look at a legacy company like Coca-Cola. So my friend tells me I have to stop drinking Coke Zero. But maybe I'll spike my coffee with Coke Zero. You probably don't know the CEO's name, and you probably don't care. I don't think anyone actually does, because the company has a long history of free cash flow. And at $68 a share, I think that's the last time I checked, that's about what it was trading at. You're getting $1.01 per share in free cash flow, so 1 cent less than Tesla. And you're talking about a company that's throwing off almost $11 billion in net profits, Coca-Cola. Tesla is throwing off just over $7 billion in net profits. And Coca-Cola's net margins are about 23%, so greater than 3 times what Tesla's are. So you have to ask yourself, what is really the purpose of capital allocation? Is it to make a statement about your belief in the value of technology? Certainly technology adds value to our lives. It will improve our lives in meaningful ways. Is it a statement about belief in the CEO? And if so, what's really the value of that? Or is it a political statement? Maybe before, people saw Tesla as a brand that was associated with the left, liberal Democrats. Maybe now they see it associated with conservatives on the right. But investment, so long as it's in an ethical company, and that's a different discussion as it relates to Tesla, it really doesn't need to be politicized in any way. It really needs to be very business-like. And it's not at all clear that there's compelling arguments, a business case for Tesla. Now, there's a lot of talk about Tesla's use of AI and the introduction of robo-taxis and humanoid robots and so forth. But the reality is that the vast majority of Tesla's revenues and earnings still are derived from auto sales. And what's going on with auto sales? Well, we saw a precipitous decline in key European markets in January, I think 45%. I believe it was 40% in February, an aggregate of 43% decline in 2 months. That is an extraordinary number. Putting aside the fact that in America, they're burning down the dealerships, keying the cars, throwing Molotov cocktails at the dealerships. Now, that, of course, is illegal conduct and is never, ever okay for anyone to do that. But at a minimum, you might want to ask yourself, why are these negative feelings against the leader and the co-founder? Actually, he's not even a co-founder. We'll just say the CEO of Tesla. Why are these negative feelings? Why do they exist? And why are they so extreme? And when you look at what's going on generally in the industry, I want to say that I think the industry for EV auto sales increased 27% year over year during the same time frame. I believe in Europe it was 26%, I want to say. And I think their largest competitor, BYD, the Chinese EV manufacturer, was up 29% in that time frame. So for Tesla to dive precipitously with their key product sales at a time when their competitors are growing, that's pretty extraordinary. And despite the pullback in the stock price, the market capitalization of Tesla, I think, is about $900 billion, so just under $1 trillion. Going back to Coca-Cola, for example, what is it, 300 billion, 330 billion, and you're getting 11 billion in net earnings on 23% net margins. And in Tesla, you're getting 7% net margins. It's difficult to explain what the business case is for allocating capital to Tesla. Now, is the stock as great of a short idea as it was 100 days? Of course not. It's lost 50% in some cases. Now it's recovered a little bit, but despite that inverse margin of safety being much smaller, I think it would be a mistake to think that the stock couldn't fall any further. Last April 2024, the shares traded as $138 a share. That was during a time when sales were still accelerating and there wasn't the brand problem occurring. There wasn't the consumer sentiment issue. Now we've got not only a plateau in sales, but we've got sales falling off precipitously in key markets like Europe. And we still have a stock price that is more than double what it was last April. So we've got a P/E, I think, of 139 for Tesla. I believe the P/E for the S&P 500 is something like, I want to say, I think it's 27 or 28. I think for the Nasdaq 100, I believe it's, I want to say 33 or 34 or something. So what would justify this triple premium on Tesla? Is it because Elon Musk promotes the stock so much? Is it because now we have political leaders promoting the stock? We even have an attorney general threatening those who would vandalize the stores. Not that that's right, and they should pay a price. They should be held accountable in a legal sense. Justice should come about. But is Tesla being given a preferential treatment amongst U.S. companies? It would appear that way. And if so, why? Why would a company need these powerful political figures to buttress its share price? If a company was really well run and had a defensible moat and had defensible economic characteristics, it wouldn't need constant promotion, whether it's from the CEO or from political leadership. So I think it's very valid to ask yourself, if you still own Tesla stock, do you really know what you own and what its real underlying value is? And if that super premium can simply be taken back away by the market and by the consumer ultimately, I would say the answer is absolutely. Despite the enormous collapse in share price, it certainly could fall much further. If it was trading at $138 a share as it was last April, I would say even then it was still expensive, particularly given the problems we're seeing now with the brand and the consumer reaction, not just in Europe, but in the United States, which speaks for itself.
A top official goes on live TV and shouts, quote, "Buy Tesla," end quote. A blatant violation of federal law. No reprimand, no investigation, just silence. Trump turned the White House into a Tesla showroom, praising Musk's cars as he eyed one for himself. Days later, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick made a sales pitch for Tesla stock, quote, "It will never be this cheap. Buy Tesla," end quote. Some say the ethics office is leaderless, watchdogs are gutted, and accountability is vanishing. Let's go back to your December 6th interview.
Now we're just creating like this movement of a lot of these accelerationists in Wall Street. They came up with this word hyperstitious, where if you just say something enough, it becomes true. And if you look at the valuation, it's just insane. So yeah, we have a short position in Tesla.
What should we expect next?
Well, Howard Lutnick should probably stop talking. I don't think he's helping Tesla shareholders. He says that Tesla shares will never be this cheap. I'd be interested to see what the analysis is behind that statement. As we said before, we're talking about a P/E of 139. We're talking about the S&P 500 trading at roughly 26. We've got the Nasdaq at 33. So on your best day, it's 4x the Nasdaq, and you've got decelerating sales. Economic forecasts exist to make the business of astrology look respectable. And I'm afraid that that's the territory that Lutnick now is waded into. And moreover, when you see the White House displaying a company's products in front of the most important building in the world, arguably, with the leader of the free world, as it were, our president, Donald Trump, promoting tacitly the product, you have to ask yourself, why would they do that but for a problem in the company? So when men get together and they appear to make these solemn statements of endorsement, these wise statements, Tesla stock will never be this cheap, buy it. You have to ask yourself, what precipitated that exactly? And why do they have to come together and to give these statements? And is it really about a wise statement? Is that really about a wise counsel on capital allocation? Or is that more about the person making the statement and the manner in which they're making the statement, which is designed obviously to influence a very large number of shareholders? So I look at that as a huge red flag, and I have no problem keeping my short position in Tesla. I may even increase it. Howard Lutnick is part of the reason, and frankly, what the officials in Washington, D.C. are doing, including Pam Bondi making these incredible threats, which appear to give preferential treatment under the law to Elon Musk and to Tesla, I would say that's a fantastic indication that we're actually on the right track 100%. Because really, Bondi, Lutnick, are these shrewd allocators? I'm not convinced. And why would they make statements that potentially could mislead so many into financial ruin, honestly, particularly amongst the retail investing crowd? They don't really always know what the financial characteristics are of a security they might own like Tesla. And I just think there's tremendous risk to that happening because we're already seeing violence, we're seeing civil unrest, we're seeing social unrest, we're seeing the vandalism going on, we're seeing arson. All of it is wrong. There is no justification for doing that. I don't care who Elon Musk is. He could be the devil incarnate. Justice belongs to God, and retribution belongs to God. This conduct is unacceptable, but it's been going on for years on both sides of the political divide, and ultimately, it could get worse. It's not enough to think that maybe Pam Bondi will come out and make some increasingly bold threat against vandals or arsonists, or attempt to pawn this off on the political left as Elon Musk has attempted to do himself. I mean, they're going to say something like a leftist billionaire is behind all this and it's orchestrated and it's part of a conspiracy. I don't believe that for a minute. I think the people in Washington, D.C. need to be asking themselves really very pointed questions, which is, why do all of these negative feelings exist against this man and the company which he leads, such that they would do something they probably ordinarily would not do? Why do they feel that they have to resort to this criminal behavior? It's not in the human person's nature to commit a crime. So when humans feel compelled to do something like this, to key an automobile or destroy property, something's very wrong when they're doing it en masse. They must feel that they don't have a voice, or that there's some great injustice going on which they feel powerless about. And I think it would behoove the administration to ask themselves why. And why has so much stock been invested in this sort of shadow president figure, Elon Musk, who nobody elected? He hasn't received a single vote from the American people. And could it get worse? I think that you could see a situation where we move increasingly towards a civil war. God forbid. We should all pray that never happens. But to think that it couldn't happen, I think, is naive. And we already see the underpinnings of that taking place now with this ongoing social unrest, which is politically motivated, at least in part. It has to stop. And what the political leadership in Washington, D.C. is doing by doubling down and getting behind this shadowy figure, Musk, is not helping. That is not the answer, actually. He needs to be treated as anybody else in the country, as any other CEO. And certainly, it's extraordinary that we see the legal and political protections he's received. He essentially has a sort of sovereign immunity now. His private security detail, for example, has been deputized. They have the right to shoot to kill, is my understanding.
Vandalizing Tesla? 20 years in prison. Attorney General Pam Bondi calls it, quote, domestic terrorism, end quote. No specific law exists, but that doesn't seem to matter. The Musk shadow government wants retribution. It has been suggested that those involved in crimes against Musk's empire could be sent to prison in El Salvador, infamous for its prison that swallows man. Shackled, shaved, shoved into darkness, the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo is not a prison. It is a machine. Deportees land in El Salvador, yanked from planes, marched under floodlights, stripped and caged like cattle. Is the message, challenge the Musk regime and you'll be crushed?
Politicians, especially experienced politicians, think through every word that they use. The idea that the leadership in Washington, D.C. would make a threat to deport vandals and arsonists to El Salvador, to one of the most notorious prisons in the world, one of the most dehumanizing, probably isn't taken too seriously by most people, but the people making those statements understand that. And we've crossed a threshold, importantly. One thing has already happened, and that is the political leadership has conditioned the population to thinking it is normal for the leadership in Washington, D.C. to make such threats. Just introducing the idea that the U.S. government, what has been the greatest government in the world in modern history, is now making threats that you would expect to come out of Beijing or Moscow or Riyadh, where political dissidents simply disappear. The idea that Americans have been conditioned to accept that as normalized conduct on behalf of the political leadership is a threshold we've now passed. There's no going back. And why would such an extreme threat be made? Why would the leadership go that far? Now, they didn't say it was a joke. Nobody said that. I think most people took it as hyperbole, but that wasn't said. So we should at least leave open the possibility that there is some seriousness to that. I mean, certainly illegal residents in the United States, gang members and with good reason, and those with criminal backgrounds have been deported, and in this case, to this very, very harsh prison. We won't opine on that at this time. But the fact that there's a mechanism to do it already, and we've seen other breaches in constitutional rights with the stifling of free speech, for example, and the stifling of other rights that citizens and residents of this country have under the current administration that we probably never thought we'd see in our lifetime. It's not really a leap to think we could go that far. And look at the people involved. If you look at Pam Bondi, for example, this is a woman who profited very greatly as a lobbyist for Qatar. So she was operating as a foreign agent. And what does Qatar do? They fund the Houthis in Yemen. America, of course, is essentially at war with the Houthis. Now, look at Pam Bondi's brother, Bradley Bondi. It's been suggested from Mr. Bondi's former clients that he's being manipulated by the Chinese Communist Party. The little Bondi, Bradley Bondi, was, of course, the one who helped Tesla get out of the rap for the misstatements that Tesla made online on social media. He actually helped them to settle on very, very favorable terms. Bradley Bondi was also involved in the DJT, the Donald J. Trump reverse merger for Truth Social. So this is a pretty small club that's involved here. Now you've got Pam Bondi coming out and forming a special commission, an FBI commission. She oversees the FBI as the Attorney General to investigate this vandalism against Tesla. There is no excuse for vandalism. There's no excuse for any criminal conduct or arson or throwing Molotov cocktails. It's absolutely horrible. It is deplorable. But there should not be a special standard for Tesla or its CEO any more than there is for any other company or its CEO. So you go back to this Bondi clan and you look at the activities they've been involved in. And to the extent that those allegations against Brad Bondi are true, which were made by, Miles Guo, the high-profile Chinese dissident who's declaimed against totalitarianism and the corruption in the Chinese Communist Party, to the extent that's true, it's worth asking, is Mr. Bondi part of a Chinese network that operates through multinational firms in Washington, D.C., as has often been discussed? And is lobbying simply running in the family, even when the interests of those that they're lobbying for are against the interests of the American people? And you look at Tesla and you say, well, okay, the Bondi family, first we have this sort of little Bradley Bondi involved in getting Elon Musk out of trouble. And before the new administration comes in, Musk is facing, a dozen different investigations, civil, criminal investigations. Honestly, from where I sit, looks like they had traction. I'm not saying the government is always right when they prosecute or when they investigate, but from what I've seen, it looks like all of those investigations had merit and they weren't that difficult to figure out. And now all of a sudden, fast forward just a couple months, 3-4 months after the election, and not only is the FBI not apparently investigating Mr. Musk, but the whole memory of these investigations seems to have disappeared. And what are we left with? A special task force investigating anyone who purportedly takes action against the Tesla brand. What a change in fortunes. And who's at the heart of it again? None other than Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General. So you look at this and it's really quite an extraordinary change of circumstances for Mr. Musk and his brand. So when he is not being prosecuted, of course, he's building this momentum and building up his stock and promoting it constantly to stratospheric levels. And when he is held accountable by the people, as should be the case of a democracy, the people should have a voice. They should speak. They should be able to feel as if they are not powerless, because that's how people in communist China feel. That's how people in North Korea feel. That's how people in Russia undoubtedly feel. And that's how people in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia feel, that they cannot have a voice. They cannot speak out. They cannot criticize those in power. But that, I'm afraid, is where we have gone now, because now we see the full force and weight of the U.S. government not only shamelessly promoting this man's stock price, but in fact offering him a sort of sovereign immunity. We see Pam Bondi's shameless threats that anyone who dares to act against the Musk empire will be facing 20 years in prison, and they'll be tracking them down, as if those criminals were somehow in a special class of their own, other than plain vanilla vandalism and arson, which is terrible to be sure, but no different than if it were any other company or any other person, which happens every other day of the week in this country, unfortunately. So look at that. Look at what's really going on behind the scenes. It's a small club at the top. It's really, it's an inner circle. Look at the great lengths they're going to protect this man, and ask yourself why. And do you want to be a part of this company? Do you really want to own those shares? Because if you think you can compromise yourself just a little bit even for profits, because you think tomorrow the share price will be higher, think again. Because when you hand your capital over to that company, when you buy the shares, you're in business with its executive management team. And ask yourself how you really feel about the beliefs of that person, because that's your business partner.
Tesla's Q4 2024 deliveries fell, marking its first annual decline. Meanwhile, Cybertrucks pile up on used car lots, and Tesla faces mounting competition from BYD, GM, and European automakers. BYD and other brands in China grew substantially faster than Tesla. BYD is also setting up plants outside of China and exporting prodigiously. Price cuts and incentives kept North America afloat, but Europe and China saw steep declines. Tesla owners are dumping their cars at record rates. Once loyal drivers now feel disconnected, citing sinking resale values and market saturation. Some have warned of a, quote, dark brand crisis, end quote. The competition is seizing defectors. Nearly every Cybertruck on the road recalled. Panels peeling off mid-drive, turning highways into death traps. 8 recalls in 15 months. Brakes, screens, wipers, failing. Videos of owners ripping panels off by hand go viral. Cybertruck owners wait. What breaks next? Tesla leads U.S. fatal accident rates nearly double the industry average. Given all of this, how dangerous is it to own Tesla shares?
Well, every person can decide that for themselves. But looking at those videos of Cybertrucks, the panels simply peeling off that are glued on, the thought that crosses my mind is, what a piece of junk. And you have to remember that when you're partnering with a management team, when you're handing your capital over, if you're handing it over to someone who's prone to deceive, that will corrupt your own character. So don't ever compromise because you think you're going to make a buck. And when you're buying Tesla, it's hard for me to see it as anything other than radical speculation. This is a troubled man who, according to very credible reports, has a substance abuse issue. Leaving aside his other serious personality defects, which people will chalk that up to autism and so forth, but I have yet to see a diagnosis, any sort of diagnosis of autism from this man. I don't think for a second he's actually autistic. I don't think he's a genius either. And you know what? He doesn't even have a very fertile mind, in my opinion, because most of the good ideas behind these companies like SpaceX or the Boring Company or Tesla, frankly, come from other people. So you have to ask yourself, with all the opportunities in the market, and now with the markets pulling back so much, there's a plethora of great long ideas. Is it really worth speculating that Musk is going to make another comeback, that he's going to continue to lead? Because that's not what the numbers bear out. BYD was up 29% last year in its sales. Their revenue, I believe, is $107 billion now, against Tesla's $97 billion. That didn't take very long for them to leapfrog Tesla. Look at the new charging technology. They're talking about a full charge, 245, 250 miles in 5 minutes. That's the same amount of time it takes to fill up a tank of gas. Look at the speed at which they're moving. And again, look at really sort of what you're part of when you buy into Tesla. This man is a reckless man, actually. He's a man that believes in the destruction of many, many things. And that's why Tesla, as you accurately say, has the highest fatality rates on the road for its vehicles. Where is he leading the consumers? Where is he leading the customers? Does he care if passengers are at risk? And if he doesn't care if sacred human life is at risk in these vehicles, they could do better on safety. If they don't care about that, then what makes you think that they're going to care about your capital and the way they handle and conduct their business? That's what I'd be asking myself. Yeah, I'm short Tesla shares. I'm going to keep that short position because I think it's going to continue to fall. But I don't encourage others to short. It's actually a terrible business almost all the time. And a great deal of that margin of safety on the short side has already been backed out in the last 90 days. So I would say stick on the long side, but look for better longs than this. This is not a great company. It doesn't have great economic characteristics. As far as I can tell, they have no real great defensible moat over their competitors. You'll say, well, they have all this data. Oh, well, they're going to do robo-taxis. Google's doing robo-taxis. You think BYD doesn't collect data on its drivers? Everybody collects data. Tesla doesn't have a monopoly on that. And in my opinion, they don't even do it well. So when I see a Cybertruck with owners peeling the panels off, I say, what a piece of garbage. And frankly, it's a reflection of the stock.
He has a poor track record on fasting. He was once accused of using vulgar language, but he said the accusation was bullshit. He loves the smell of gasoline and burning oil around his motorcycles and never stops drinking Coke Zero. He hasn't learned how to walk away from a fight. He's been to hell and back more than once, bringing a few public companies along for the ride. Other clergy scoff at him. The SEC and Big Pharma try to, quote, silence him for good. But their efforts haven't had the intended effect. That's Father Emmanuel.
Growing up in Tirana, where the call to a dawn echoed from the spiraling minarets, was a powerful experience for her. Albanians were forced to convert to Islam under Ottoman rule. In 1967, under the Marxist-Leninist regime, Albania became the world's first atheist state and destroyed churches to eradicate Christianity, in a land where St. Paul once preached the gospel. Her grandfather fought as a guerrilla fighter, and her father commanded a tank brigade. When communism collapsed, there was an insurrection against the state, leading to anarchy. Albanian women are known for their resilience. It is said they are born from the barrel of a gun. As a teenager, her father was flown out of the country without notice on a military helicopter to save his life. From then on, she started sleeping with an AK-47 next to her bed.